going on, Reef Builders? I'm Jake Adams, and I'm really excited to be bringing you my video coverage of Reefapalooza New York. Before I move on, you definitely want to look in my video history and check out the live stream from the event, both on Saturday and on Sunday, because that's when I walked around and kind of showed the show floor, talked to some people about their tanks, their displays, and especially highlighted some of the new products. So link will be in the description for those two live stream videos. I definitely want to give a shout out to my channel sponsors. You know, there's a very flashy intro at the beginning of all my videos, and I just want to take a minute to just, say a sincere thank you to Worldwide Corals, Ecotech Marine, and Brightwell Aquatics for sponsoring this channel, for sponsoring the work that I do. They've been supportive of everything on Reef Builders, the website, for many, many years, and without them, I couldn't spend as much time, resources, and energy as I do putting together these videos. So they believe in me, you guys believe in me, and it's because of their help that I will soon be able to move on to some bigger and grander things, and I really look forward to telling you about that in the future. But for now, let me tell you about Reefapalooza New York. So I used to think that I went to a lot of coral and frag events internationally, domestically, but since the rise of Reefapalooza, another Reefapalooza in Orlando and New York, together with my own shows, that frag fever that I started in the 90s of making little frags has really gone full scale for me, and I have so many corals now just over the last couple of years from attending all these shows. And even as a die-hard reef keeper, something about going to the shows and seeing all the corals and seeing all the frags, you just can't resist. You know, for this Reefapalooza, I told myself, okay, no more corals, not this time, because I'm going to be going to Oregon and I don't want to travel back and forth. And I resisted only until like later Saturday, and then finally found a coral I had to have. And once I'm bringing home one coral, might as well bring home a dozen, because it's the same amount of effort, I guess, to bag it all up and make sure to get it into a tank when it needs to go. So even for a very seasoned aquarist like myself, going to these reef shows is infectious, and seeing all these frags just always gives me ideas. It's like, oh, I could have a piece of this over here, and I have a spot for the stylo on this part of my reef tank or my nano, and man, going to these shows is it's very inspiring, is what I'm trying to say. It's always inspiring me to grow better corals and to make room and to set up more tanks to hold more corals. So yeah, there's one of the really cool parts about Reefapalooza. So one of the things about this Reefapalooza that's really interesting to note is as of the beginning of this year and as of about May, basically we have not had any imports of corals from Fiji. That's a really important location for reef corals, and we have not been able to receive any corals from Indonesia since about May or so. And despite this lack of a source of new wild corals or maricultured corals, the reef hobby is not skipping a beat. Most of the corals that are available at Reefapaloozas, a big chunk of them are all grown from frags, grown in people's home tanks, and just our captive population of corals has been enough so far to feed the reef aquarium shows. There might have been a few less LPS corals, maybe a few less Cynarinas and Trachyphilias and Symphilias and some of the bigger, showier stuff, and elegans corals from Indonesia. But by and large, the supply that we already have, that we're working with, together with increased exports from Australia, there was no shortage of corals in any of the tanks here at Reefapalooza in New York. So I already mentioned there was tons of frags at Reefapalooza, and there's a little bit of everything, and I just want to, touch on some of the things that always are catching my attention. And definitely the last few years, the coolest thing that I see rising in popularity is the Ghanies, man. Seeing those Ghani frags, and I have some Ghani frags that I picked up last year that have grown really, really well. Most colorful Ghanies are the ones that actually do the best in captivity. So it's really cool to see some Ghani frags that people aren't just chopping up corals, they are in fact growing them and my personal pieces I picked up last year are doing really great. So awesome to see so many Ghanies rising in popularity and being propagated and all the different colors coming out. So as I waxed poetically earlier about Reefapalooza kind of like fueling my coral addiction, I was always kind of on the fence when it came to zoanthids. It's not that I don't like zoanthids, I love zoanthids and other people's tanks, but it just took me a long time to kind of get with the craze. I mean, I've always liked the super bright Rastas, purple people eaters, Bam Bams, some of the nuclear greens, purple deaths, all that stuff. Lately I've kind of picked up some butt kissers, hallucinations, bow tie blasters. Zoanthids are not a fad, they're definitely like a big, huge part of the reef aquarium hobby. And you know, I can see why. I have 25 varieties in my 6-gallon nano tank alone, so it's because of these frag events that I'm feeling the zoanthid craze a little bit more. So another group of corals that is showing no sign of slowing down is, of course, the coralomorphs, the shrooms, the mushroom anemones, the bounces. The bounce shrooms are still just kind of the top dollar coral that you can see at these reef shows. I can only be impressed so many times by seeing the big orange vesicles. Thankfully, there's a lot of cool other strains that people are looking out for. Different takes on the lava lamp, the watermelons, and just various rhodactis with you know, cool multicolored tentacles. I picked up a couple of neat discosomas myself, not for real money, mind you, just what Joe Caparella likes to call lots of potential or high potential corals. Try to find that diamond in the rough, that $20, $30 frag. That has a lot of potential to color up and to grow into something really, really interesting. So this brings me to something I'm going to focus on deliberately in the future, is how to buy corals at the frag shows. But there's definitely some cool ways to select corals, to get deals, and eventually definitely a video on how to take them home, because I feel like that's really important. The high dollar frags, they're the ones that make the headlines. You know, if it bleeds, it leads. So nobody talks about the big chunk of purple cap they picked up for 15 bucks, because everybody's got it, the orange cap, or the digitata. But if you like corals that look great from across the room, like I do, man, you can really, really clean up. So one of the things I do look for is, you know, kind of bigger chunks, and you can kind of see them from across the aisles. Is that tank's got a bunch of frags that look like they might have recently been cut or broken out of a display tank and haven't even had the time to put them on frag plugs. That's a good sign that there's going to be some good deals. And at this show, I definitely picked up a handful of corals that years ago would have cost hundreds of dollars. They would have had a funky name, but now that they've come in huge numbers, people are not afraid to just, oh, here's a great deal, nice encrusted frag, here's 30 bucks, nice Cyphastria, nice Samacora. One great example is an orange war coral of Favites that I picked up. That orange war coral with their red mouths 5 years ago would have had a name, it would have been $150, $200 for like a tiny little nub, but I've been patient, and then I found the booth that had what was that, like $30 frags or $40 frags? And here's the next tip. If you really want a deal, always ask for the 2 for price. Always ask for how much for this with this, and you know, find a nice round number to make it stomachable, because most likely that vendor wants to make a certain amount of money on, you know, the prize corals, the things that are kind of flashy, but some of the supporting actors might not be so expensive. So when you get those 2 corals for a nice round price, that is one great way to get a great deal on frags at these coral aquarium events. If you don't go to frag shows that often, don't rush in and start buying everything. You take a look around, because sometimes the same coral or nearly identical strains can be at a few different vendors, and they're going to have varying cost, varying size, varying quality, and hopefully you can find the combination of those factors that really makes the coral a good value. So definitely walk around, do some smart shopping, and compare prices from one booth to the other. And but at the end of the day, it's your money, you do what you want. That's just my insight. So when it comes to corals, we've already talked about the shrooms, we've talked about the zoanthids, and one question that people often ask me is like, why don't I feature the SPS corals so much? And there's a lot of SPS corals at these shows. but they're not super photogenic, you know, they're just the size of a quarter, so they're a lot harder to film with unspecialized equipment. So I tend to focus on the Stylosignalas, some of the Montes, and some of the, you know, at least bright, colorful, stony corals. But for some reason also, when I'm shooting, looking down on a flat coral tank, the acro sticks are pointing straight up, and you don't really get to see the frag. And anyway, long story short, the acros and the sticks, the fuzzy colored sticks, are not as pretty on camera as they are in real life. So that's why I shoot a little bit less of them. But there's always a bunch there, and I'll try to figure out a technique for bringing more of those to you. So with that being said, I'm going to focus a little bit on showing you some of the LPS corals that I saw. So Lords, man, Micromusa Lords, they're just always a good time. That's a good time coral. That's a coral you can count on to be colorful and juicy and puffy and respond to the environment. They do great in low light and moderate light. Just can't get enough of Lords. We're still discovering crazy color varieties, and if you give them love, you feed them moderate flow, good balanced lighting, man, you can bring out lots of colors, lots of polyp extension, and Lords, good go-to coral. One of the other things I really love seeing at the frag shows, the oddball corals, right? So in previous videos, we've talked about Cynarinas and Indophilias, always, the Scolies are always super, super showy. I love going to the shows so I can see them all in real life. But you know, in my home tank, except for my budget, I can't even buy one of those things, you know? So it's nice to take pictures and videos, share with you guys, see the ultras, see the masters, see the brain melters, whatever they want to call them. But there's always a lot of great showy Australian scolies, and always super cool to see. Oddball LPS corals, and I'm talking about Parascalemia, which is once known as Australamusa. Sorry for you guys that don't like scientific names, but I don't think they have another name, so you're gonna have to run with that one. And the Croc Scolies. Croc Scolies is another one of those groups of corals that you really want to pay attention to what you're paying, because when they're freshly imported, you know, they have a lot of potential, again, with that potential coral, and you might be able to pick some up for 100, 150, 200, and with some love, some TLC, just like the Lords, you can get some really, really exciting corals out of that. This is a specimen that a gentleman in this booth was telling me about, and he ran home and got it just to show it off at the show, not even to sell it. And he picked that up for a reasonable price. And on the flip side, this coral is virtually identical, same degree of color, maybe even a little bit smaller. I think the price on this one was like $850, you know? So if you're a collector, definitely use a little bit of restraint, because there's lots of opportunities to pick up great corals for not too much money. On that note, the Australamusa / Parascalemia is one of those neat multi-mouth colonial LPS that just don't get enough love. Their colors are usually a little bit more muted than some of the other LPS corals, but I just think they're super neat. You know, we can't have retina melting coral colors for everything. Otherwise, you just end up with a neon reef tank, which I'm sure that's what most of you want. But these Parascalemias are really, really cool, and since nobody is fighting for them, the price is affordable, the size is large, and we're talking about colonies, not frags. So yeah, these Parascalemias / Australamusas are really, really cool, and definitely keep an eye out for them. Last but certainly not least, we're getting close to the end of the video, but I still have some eye candy to show you. And you know what? There was some cool fish at Reefapalooza New York this year. A little bit more than we're used to. I think at Reefapalooza Orlando, there was a nice display of Lenardi wresses, super duper cool. But this time, there was a nice little cluster of gemtangs. And not only were they big and beautiful, but they were actually affordable. Gemtang price a few years ago, you'd be looking at $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, right? It's totally a status symbol fish, which I absolutely want one day. But if you're looking for aspirational fish, but that's not too expensive, at Reefapalooza there was a show special for $800. Now these gemtangs are actually coming out of the Philippines, which is part of the reason they're actually really affordable now, and I do believe the price will drop to be $800, kind of a regular pricing, and we might see that go down a little bit more over time. But there's never been a better time to not only get a gemtang, but pick the one you want. It was really cool to see a handful of these at Reefapalooza. Another thing that I'd never seen before, which is really, really cool to see in person, was captive bred flame angels by Sid Kroll. Now, not only are these captive bred flame angels, they are captive bred Hawaiian flame angels. Now, if you're not an angelfish connoisseur, Hawaiian flame angels are the reddest red flame angels you can get. They're still kind of red from the Marshall Islands, but they start turning orange, a little bit more orangey. They don't have that blood red color. So seeing these fish by Sid Kroll, they looked amazing. They had great color, great pattern, just bouncing around everywhere. You know, I've seen pictures of those fish for a long time, and I've seen them this tiny bitty years and years ago. But that batch was really brilliant colored fish. So I could totally see myself picking some of those up in the future. And then what is a classic reef tank without clownfish and anemones? Rose bubble tips, they're still just the brightest, most colorful anemone that's regularly available to the aquarium hobby. People are propagating them, putting names on them, and no matter how goofy that is on one sense, in the other sense, it's great because it ensures that we're going to have a lot of these strains available in the reef aquarium hobby in the future. And the availability of these amazing rose bubble tip anemones was used to create some awesome displays at Reefapalooza. So we saw some beautiful rose bubble tips in little boxes with clownfish in them that you could take home as a pair. But this one rose bubble tip in the Red Sea display had a variety of storm clownfish, maroon clownfish, lightning marooned, Picassos and whatnot, all together in one anemone, and they were super duper cool. Really catchy display at the end of that peninsula tank, and man, just can't get over how videogenic that was. Really cool, and I hope you like it too. So that's kind of my wrap up for Reefapalooza Orlando. You know, there's always so much to see, and this is just my look, my point of view at Reefapalooza New York this year. So definitely, if you like what you see, tell me what it is. Tell me what it is you like the most. The product, the coral, the livestock, the displays. Let me know in the comments. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And before I leave, if you want to see more Reefapalooza New York, Reefapalooza New York, definitely search YouTube. There's so many YouTubers there. Each one has their own style, their different way of looking at things. And by watching these a few videos from different people, you're gonna get lots of different angles. But I hope you always come back to Reef Builders, you know, for that really uncut, unfiltered look at reef shows, reef tanks. Thanks to everybody who's been supporting the channel, including my amazing sponsors. And I am going to make this video short so I can get working on another video. So stay tuned, and I'll catch you guys on the next episode.